to the Strikers Texas MLS Podcast. John Arnold here in beautiful Dallas, Texas. Victor Ariza in Houston. And Victor,
More
I
beautiful
said,
Houston, Texas.
well, I don't know about that, but I guess the vibes are good today after the Dynamo get a victory. And I think the show this week, Victor, is all about Texas solidarity, because you say, oh, well, there are only 3 points for Texas teams this week in MLS, and all 3 come from the Houston Dynamo beating Nashville SC 2-1. But really, when you look at the chain of events, I feel like this is Texans helping Texans, because at the start of the Saturday, FC Dallas loses to the Colorado Rapids. That's not what FC Dallas wanted, but it means that Austin FC, hey, relax. You're locked into the 2 seed. No one's going to steal your playoff spot. Austin chills out a little bit, lets FC Dallas stay within touching distance. They lose to Vancouver 2-0. And then Sunday, Houston, they're like, all right, we'll take care of Nashville SC for you, because now FC Dallas goes into decision day after losing the control of their own destiny. They're back in control of their own destiny thanks to this Houston win. If FC Dallas gets a point on Sunday, decision day, FC Dallas will lock up the 3 seed, lock up the home game that comes with it. Honestly, Victor, not that much drama otherwise in Texas for decision day. So let's focus a little bit on that game last night. I would say an extremely bright point in what's been a dim Houston Dynamo season. A good performance. Sebastian Ferreira was locked in. Hector Herrera saw the field. I mean, if you had had more of that this season, then you'd be talking about the Dynamo playing or something on decision day.
Yeah, and listen, I don't know how much of Texas solidarity there was for this Houston team trying to help out FC Dallas, but
I think that was the main motivation. I bet that's what Kenny was talking about in the locker room. Hey, we got to help FCD.
Maybe they saw Austin didn't win in Nashville. Dallas didn't either. They both got beat by big goal margins, and Houston came in and pulled a stunner. But it's a win that has to be taken a little bit with. First of all, it's a feel good, right? Like you said, because of the moment of the team. The season the fans have gone through, quite a few of them made the trip. So just first off the bat, it's a great win. Just as you end the season, not going to the playoffs, but at least you seem to be ending on a high note. But it does have to be taken into consideration a little bit. It has to be looked a little deeper, because it was a very unlucky Nashville team in the beginning moments. I think by now people have probably seen the Mukhtar attempt that should have probably been a goal, and it was denied by the top bar. They were a couple of moments right before where Mukhtar missed the net. So did Leal, and these were the type of goals that against FC Dallas, against Nashville, and against other teams, frankly, throughout the season, Nashville has been stone cold in converting.
It has come down to finishing, especially with Hani Mukhtar, who's kind of locked into this MVP conversation now with Sebastian Driussi of Austin FC, who we'll get to in just a moment. Another kind of player we've come to expect to do great things that didn't take care of business necessarily this weekend, although I think the stakes were a bit lower because Nashville was trying to lock up that 3 seed, the home game. I hear what you're saying, Victor, and certainly Nashville had their chances, but they're going to get those chances. And Houston had their chances as well. I really thought that they were going to run the game up to 3-0. I thought Ferreira was going to have his hattie. He had that breakaway after the Nashville corner, and a fantastic save by former Dynamo goalkeeper Joe Willis now in the Nashville net. So I agree with you that certainly Nashville has been more clinical, has been deadly against Texas teams and against other teams as you see them surge up the standings toward the end of the season. At the same time, the Dynamo had great opportunities. They were creating chances. I thought it was interesting how the midfield sort of played together at the start of the game without Ache, and then he comes into this kind of 3-man unit alongside Vera and Coco. I thought that was, these are alterations that the Dynamo has tried a little bit that maybe haven't worked out, but everything was clicking Sunday, and it was a game in which they did what they've had the potential to do all year, maybe.
Yeah, the biggest thing too is the international break allows for a little bit more preparation. So essentially, you have 2 weeks to sort of look at this game. With some of their core roster, the guys that weren't on the international break. I do think, for as much as Nashville choked this one, because they did, they were fighting for that, like you said, a home playoff game. It was the last game of it was the last home game of the regular season for them. If they don't get a home playoff game, this might have been it for the season in front of their fans. So I do think that aspect has to be taken into consideration from Nashville. But as much credit needs to be given to Houston for the preparation. I think under Bundy, you do see a team that has given more attention to detail in certain things, those fine details that the team talked about. If we just fix this or if we just fix that, well, at least whatever the game plan is now, the team's bought in, right? And maybe part of that is players are final 2 games, they're playing for contracts. There's a lot of decisions to be made as far as the roster, and I'm sure for as much as there hasn't been any playoffs around these parts, players aren't looking to move in the offseason, right? There's a lot of players that are content with being here, that maybe if the results were just a different way, maybe a different coach. I think that's all to be seen, and that's why this ending stretch has to be taken with a grain of salt as well, right? How much stock can be put into this game? How much, for the people saying, hey, keep Bundy, right? Make him the head coach. I mean, how much can you put into this?
I want to go there because I was watching the game on ESPN Plus, and they just served me the Nashville broadcast. Love local broadcast. Love the Nashville broadcast. I think those guys do a great job. But one of the kind of discussion points they were chatting about was, well, now why not give Kenny Bundy the head coach job? Of course, it's 2 wins in the Bundy era now. I read your piece, Victor, last week on the Striker, and people can go check it out, where you kind of listed,
thank you,
as we did last week, kind of on the pod, potential names. And there's these different categories that you grouped kind of all the coaching candidates into. I don't want to say you're dismissive of Bundy, but I think you were kind of making the point, both in the capsule you wrote about him and about some of the other potential managers, people like Tata Martino, Juan Carlos Osorio, guys with MLS experience, although both of those guys also have MLS experience, but other kind of MLS veterans, that perhaps, this is a nice experience for Bundy, but I think Houston fans might say, look, like, we've gone this route before. Bundy does have the team playing better, but I'm not sure it's so wildly better that you say, this guy's ready for a head coaching job, toss him in. But how did you read the situation? Does a victory like this, do performances like this and the one against the New England Revolution, change the panorama at all for the head coaching spot?
I think this one a little bit more, maybe that LAFC game, even though they lost, right? I think New England, a lot has to be said too. Houston is, whether they were last place or second to last in the Western Conference, they are taking them for granted. They're not. You can tell, right? You can tell teams aren't taking them as seriously, right? They're maybe thinking this might be a cakewalk. I think Nashville thought some of that last night. It looked uninspired at times. So there is some of that has to be read into the situation. I think there are certain players that are giving a different energy on the field for whatever reason that may be. I think, because of the ending, everybody wants to kind of get out of here, get on a good note. I think all these things make it hard to analyze and say, for sure Bundy deserves the job, because there are factors here that we saw throughout the season, right? Some certain players not getting playing time, right? The tough stretch over the summer, which has still been the key problem for Houston. I think, Bundy's certainly giving them a case. He's certainly giving the GM and the owners, something to think about as far as, the vacancy here. And if, they don't get the guy, or, maybe it's too costly for whoever they want to go after, it may end up being a good situation, and Bundy may end up getting the job. But I think, given the context of what Houston has seen over the last decade, where, they missed the playoffs, I believe it's 8 out of the last 9 seasons, you got to get as close to what you can to a home run in this next coaching hire. This is pivotal for the future of the organization. This has to be somebody that absolutely changes the culture, gets you in the playoffs, or at least starts to give you that start of the changing culture. I mentioned guys like Osorio, which I feel like I've kind of talked myself into unwantedly.
Hey man, I'm with you.
Martino, and Osorio a little bit more because obviously his attention to detail, going all the way to the academy level. But even if you bring one of those guys for a couple of years, right, 2 years, let's say, like Martino was in Atlanta, and you groom Bundy for the future, I think that could be a more long-term approach with him.
Yeah. And listen, I think Kenny Bundy he's availed himself well, but I also feel like he's probably smart enough to say, I might not be ready for this. I think like some other interns are maybe in that position where, like last year, FC Dallas had Marco Ferruzzi, and he didn't get the results, and he ultimately moved to a different position with the club in the front office. But he said, I want this job. And he was a guy who'd been an assistant for years and years and years. Bundy doesn't have that profile necessarily. And I think if he were to get this head coaching job right now and didn't find immediate success. Those are two big ifs. Who knows if that would happen?
Right.
But when does the next job come? You know, a guy like Luchi Gonzalez, it was his first head coaching experience. He didn't work as an assistant before. He wasn't able to get the results that FC Dallas wanted. But because of his reputation and what he's done after, he's getting another MLS shot relatively quickly. I'm not sure that's the case for Bundy because I don't think he's built that profile yet. Perhaps games like this are the start of that build. I'm not so sure that I would give him the head coaching job. I just think that for Dynamo fans, as you mentioned, it's been such a long time. And you went the Nakamura route last time, a kind of, we know what we're getting. We know the guy. We care more about maybe the person than we care about what he's done on the field. I think you need someone who really, really has a reputation in the game, has a proven track record of success. We'll see if that's the direction the Dynamo go. Let's talk a little bit, Victor, about Austin FC. They went up to Vancouver and found it quite difficult to beat the Vancouver Whitecaps. They didn't do so. They didn't get the victory. A 2-0 victory from Vancouver, a game that kind of started all wrong for Austin FC. Ryan Gauld breaks through early. Austin was missing Gabrielson. He has a knock. It sounds like it's not too serious, just didn't travel, kind of out of precaution, as Austin had basically locked up the 2 seed before this game, does have the 2 seed locked up now after results sort of went their way. So Gauld scores early, and then Austin sort of puts the foot on the gas. They had a pretty good response, Victor, to the first goal, to the Vancouver opener. You had a lot of chances from Maxi Urruti, a lot of chances for Sebastian Driussi. And Driussi, a guy who, I'll say it, I'll put it out there, I voted MVP. I don't always vote. You vote in the awards, Victor?
I think you're probably representing all of us. I don't think I got, unless I missed the email.
Well, we'll talk to the MLS comms folks about that. I usually don't vote because I'm usually like, I haven't seen enough of MLS to truly give like a sample size. But this year I watched a ton. I'm like, man, there's people that are voting that have watched way fewer games than me. That doesn't mean my opinion is right or better. But I voted Driussi for MVP. That being said, he's in a rut. He's in a bit of a rut. Right. Missed a big chance right at the hour mark. Right after, Vancouver sort of seemed to say, oh boy, we don't have this game locked up. Lucas Cavallini scores a nice move. I thought that Austin, once again, we sort of see the same issues with this Austin team. If Driussi isn't on, if Maxi Urruti doesn't find a goal, they struggle to find the back of the net. And their center backs, with or without Gabrielson, I think, maybe not up to it. I thought Cavallini did a great job starting that move, and then his run should have been picked up, but he's there to finish the goal. 2-0, Vancouver takes the victory. And Victor, as I mentioned, it's a bit of a rut for Driussi, a bit of a rut for Austin FC. Chris wrote during the week, wrote yesterday, a piece talking about how in some ways we expected this from Driussi. He was wildly outperforming the analytic numbers. We're starting to see the slide.
He was carrying the damn team. Let's face it. He was carrying.
So are you? So do you think that he turns it back on, quote unquote, when the playoffs start? Josh Wolf said that's not a thing. He said you don't have a switch that you flip for big games. That's not how sports work. That's not how game preparation works.
Well,
does Austin FC have it in the playoffs? Because if not, I mean, if you can't just flip the switch for the big games, you got to get it flipped on decision day because you got to get it going into the playoffs, right?
I think there is a bit of a switch. I'm not saying that he's not trying or that Austin isn't trying to win these games, but I do think we've talked about it. What is there to gain, right? I mean, they've already locked into the 2 seed. They're not going to move up. They're already secured a home playoff game. And the last thing you want is Driussi getting injured in these last 2 games they're essentially meaningless in the bigger picture, right? If he gets injured, you go into the playoffs without him. I mean, there goes your MLS MLS Cup winning hopes.
To be honest, man, I was sort of surprised to see him go the full 90 because he's been I don't think he's been injured or carrying a knock, but I mean, it's turf. It's a far trip.
Right.
I thought he might come out or maybe even, I guess the game kind of conditions that. And as Josh Wolf is saying, hey, we're not going to flip a switch. We need to get these guys in rhythm, but
save it for the playoffs. I mean,
I think I agree, but I think 3 big chances missed by Driussi. I think it's fair to ask the question, is he going to be able to do what we saw him do the first 5, 6, 7 months, whatever it is now, of the season? Or has he sort of started to backslide, right? I would say it seems like Driussi is a big game player. It seems like Austin FC is a big game team, right? When the lights are on, when it's the LAFC game that we've all been waiting for,
right?
Austin's great. When it's a random midweek game against a non-playoff rival, when it's a game where there's not that much to play for, far from home in Vancouver, it seems like that's when they struggle, right? When the lights are on, it seems like this team does what they need to do. But I think the issues that have dogged them all season have still been the issues. The other thing, it's a start for my man, Big Rig. He didn't really grow
He's got to
into
get
the
going,
occasion.
man. He's got to
Man,
get. See, I think that's the biggest thing for me, for Austin. That's the guy you want to get going. That's the guy you kind of want to, forget maybe Drew's taking some shots. Try to feed him as much as you can, and get that dude kind of getting a little bit in rhythm, because the potential is there, right? Or at least it's imagine what they can do together. That would make Austin way more dangerous than Drewsy, who I think, once Q2 is full and it's the first playoff game and that electricity is in the air. I mean, again, I think whether you want or not, that switch will be flipped.
I think so too.
But to get like you said, Rigoni in form, I mean that's a little tougher to do in just one game.
He arrived so late, and so did Drewsy last season, right? I'm not saying anything is wrong or right necessarily. It's just how the transfer market broke down, and obviously the Cecilio situation complicated what Austin FC had done with their roster build. They filled a hole somewhat eloquently by getting another big name player, a guy who's supposed to be able to combine with Drewsy instantly to adapt as quickly as possible. But many players go through an adaptation period in this league. He got here so late, made his debut just barely in August. I think it was August 31st. So he's been here like a month. Sebastian Lletget, who FC Dallas acquired in August, it feels like he's been here all season, but he's a guy who knows what MLS is. He knows the speed of play. He knows his teammates, in some cases, from the national team. Big Rig has that Drewsy connection. Other than that, I don't think he has that link. And so you have Chris Bills and Matt Doyle and other analysts looking and asking, is this guy a fit? Because right now, it doesn't necessarily seem like it. Austin closes out the season, Victor, at home. They play Colorado, a feisty team, actually, as we're about to get into with FC Dallas, but ultimately a team that Austin can, I think, get a little bit of momentum before one, and they hope to home
sort of a practice game at home before the big playoff game, if you think about it. And I think they're fine. I think Drewsy, I think, is the least of the worries that I have for Austin. I think the rest of the team is the one that has to kind of, obviously Rudy find the back of the net a little bit more. The rest of the guys try to get informed, because once you get to the playoffs, and Drewsy is going to get less chances regardless, because they're going to be facing better opposition. Can they get Rigoni, to have an opportunity where he can shine? Who else can save you? Is it going to be Ethan Finley? Is it going to be Fagundes? Is it going to be Urruti? That's hopefully something they can address in this last game and kind of get a little bit of rhythm going into that first ever playoff game at Q2.
Oh, and that's why maybe it's like galaxy brain for me, but I think that that's to me why Drewsy is MVP. Even when he misses chances, I think you could make the same argument maybe with Hani. He wasn't able to finish his chances, Nashville loses. Drewsy isn't able to finish his chances, Austin FC loses. But I think the fact that you just feel that he's going to get in gear, that he's going to get this team to where they want to be, a much better performance or a much better season this year than last. To me, I'm not worried about him either necessarily, but I think it's fair to ask some questions because he doesn't look like he's in rhythm like he was at the start of the season. And those analytic numbers that said he would kind of return back to earth are sort of being proved out. Let's talk a little bit about FC Dallas. You got one more on Drewsy?
No, I was going to say, the big thing for decision day too for Austin is going to be who falls into that 7th spot. Because if it's Portland, that ain't gonna be good news. But if they can get one of those other teams, maybe it works out.
Yeah, that Minnesota matchup would be nice. RSL could get there. A couple other teams still in the mix, but the 2 Texas teams don't have to worry about it. And that includes FC Dallas, as I mentioned, Victor. The big conversation after that loss, a 1-0 loss against the Colorado Rapids in Commerce City, was frustration that they hadn't been able to secure controlling their own destiny. Now, thanks to the Houston Dynamo, look, I told FC Dallas fans after the game in my post-match video from the stadium, you might not like it. You might not want to be in this position. But tomorrow, you're a Houston Dynamo fan. It worked out. The Dynamo get the victory. And now all FC Dallas has to do is get a point against Sporting Kansas City. We'll talk about that game a little bit and talk about that on the Striker this week. SKC, the second hottest team in the entire league since August 1st. This is a good Sporting Kansas City team. But you only need to draw at home. And that home field is so critical in MLS. We keep learning that lesson, right? Because FC Dallas, very good at home, okay on the road. the Colorado Rapids out of the playoffs, eliminated, but in front of a nearly full, actually, Dick's Sporting Goods Park. Good atmosphere. Shout out Rapids fans. Something I don't usually say. I mean, it's not a huge fan base. They saw a game that featured Diego Rubio getting a goal just after the hour mark. FC Dallas with big issues at winger. Paul Arriola was suspended for this game. Alan Velasco still working back from a thigh injury. Bernard Kamungo picked up an ankle knock. And so you saw Khalil Medkar make his first MLS start. And Jair Obrian on the other side. Honestly, the best sort of tactics that were working were pinging the ball over the top and hoping that Obrian could run onto it. Jesus Ferreira led the line. That's obviously FC Dallas's best forward. He was their only forward in the traveling party as far as an actual number 9. And he, Wednesday, had come back from Europe. So he looked a little tired. I thought everybody on FC Dallas maybe did. Altitude is a factor. I wrote on the Striker, Victor, this is a weird game. Just a weird one. Midday, the Univision slot, altitude, 4 or 5 like typical guys missing, some guys coming back from Europe. All of that to say, not excuses. They lost this game. Colorado won. But I think it helps you prepare for the playoffs when it's possible you're playing on a Monday night because of TV. It's possible you're playing a weird day game. It's possible someone gets injured. To me, there are lessons that FC Dallas can take from this 1-0 loss and apply them to the playoffs, which they know they're in.
Yeah. Certainly a reminder, too, that they've had attacking struggles earlier this season. That kind of held them back from having a higher spot. That's maybe one of the things here. But I think, the biggest focus is if they can get a home playoff game, kind of get rolling at home, get going. That's the biggest thing. The front three and how they do in the playoffs is the biggest question, right? Because I think in the beginning of the season, I was saying in the beginning of the season, I thought that front three had a potential to be the best front three in MLS. And then we just kind of saw them cool off, right? And if they can get back to that, to me, that's going to make Dallas a very dangerous team. And that's why I think them more than Austin have a bigger maybe ceiling in these playoffs, at least just in from my perspective.
Yeah, it was a really bad time for Alan Velasco, not that he tried, to get injured because they were getting that rhythm. At the start of the season, it was kind of the Paul Arriola show. He was the player of the month in May. Then Jesus Ferreira started scoring and scoring and scoring and scoring. And then Velasco started to get rhythm as well. His first MLS season, it seemed like he understood the league. He's been working with a nutritionist to get his body right. And so many times at the start of the year, he would get stuck on an island. It would be Velasco kind of doing his own thing, and then Ferreira and Paul kind of playing over here, having fun. And once Sebastian Lletget joined the team, once Velasco had more time, they were really starting to click. Then you have a game like Saturday where 2 of the 3 guys in that group are missing, and one of them is on basically a day's rest, coming back from the U.S. national team game. It's tough. And so I think that, FC Dallas resting a little bit at the start of this week. They have an extra day. Everyone has an extra day of preparation going into that Sunday decision day. I think that you could see that unit clicking again, but they don't have the rhythm that they hoped to have when they were starting to roll in August.
I do want to ask you this, though, and this is more, again, looking bigger picture. Where does Obrian fit into all of this, right? Because I think, I think everybody kind of focused on the three guys because they're the 3 big money guys. But, does he have an argument to be in the front 3? Should he be more involved?
No,
obviously not play this game, but
look,
overall.
I talked to him last week. He's a nice guy. I think he has the right attitude. He trains extremely hard from what the coaching staff says, from what I've been able to observe in open periods. But he doesn't do it on the field. He was signed last year essentially to be a replacement for Michael Barrios, who we saw this weekend. It wasn't a great spot necessarily because you have that sort of visual where it's like, yeah, Barrios is old. He's getting a little slower, and speed was his top asset.
But he's been good.
Yeah, exactly. And Obrian was supposed to be this Barrios replacement. They felt okay trading him away. Literally, Obrian played at the same academy club, obviously came from the same league. He was supposed to be Barrios part 2. He was supposed to be younger Barrios, and he just wasn't. He just hasn't been able to kind of reach that threshold. When I talked to Nico Estevez about him last week, the coach kind of told me, listen, like he does the right things. He trains hard, but he needs to calm down. He needs to be relaxed in front of goal. He needs to not speed up his processes because a lot of times it seems like he's getting chances and then he panics. He stresses and he doesn't finish the moves. And so, he was, I think he's another kind of symbol of FC Dallas trying to do things the way last year when they were building that roster, kind of trying to do things the way they did in 2016 when it worked and they won the Supporters Shield. The league has moved on. It's a different league, and FC Dallas is playing in that league now. But when Paul Arriola, who you acquired with the most allocation money ever traded for a player, and Alan Velasco, your club record signing, when your quote-unquote money moves are sitting back in Frisco while you're playing in Commerce City, it's tough to make things happen. Again, not making excuses for FCD. They ended up in a pretty nice spot, thanks to the Houston Dynamo, thanks to a couple other results going their way. The Galaxy drawing instead of winning, I think, was a help as well. And ultimately, they just need a point against a very good Sporting Kansas City team to lock up that 3 seed. I think that 3 seed, Victor, could be a little bit more important than people are maybe noticing. Obviously, the first game is at home, and if there's an upset, the second game is at home too, right? I mean, I know it might not be. You might be headed on the road, but I think that's like a quietly 3 could be a really nice number for Dallas, especially just like we talk about with Austin. Last year was brutal,
right? Oh man, it's I go back to the thing, same thing with Austin, right? They're trying to maybe avoid Portland. Dallas, like you said, trying to avoid Portland probably as well. Currently, that would be the matchup, but I think if Portland does get in, they'd probably get a result out at RSL, which would maybe push them up, depending on what happens with the other teams. There's a lot of direct matchups, right, this last weekend, which kind of makes it interesting, right? I think
last week we talked about our dreams, and I said I think Minnesota is the dream playoff opponent just because it seems like they're kind of lagging. But ultimately, as it should be, if you want to be a champion, if you want to lift MLS Cup, you're going to have a quite difficult road. LAFC they win the Supporters Shield this weekend. They're kind of the obvious favorite, right? But Austin could do it. FC Dallas could do it. The Galaxy are extremely hot right now. They could do it. I don't think I wouldn't want to see Nashville right now. I know that Houston just beat them, but Hani Mukhtar is really, really good. The defense, especially in a one-game situation, that's a team that can pack, make things difficult, shut down your attack, and find that one goal through Mukhtar, pretty much just through Mukhtar, to be honest. But I don't know that you want to see any of these teams. I know you're saying avoid Portland, but if the Galaxy,
to me, that out of the bottom, teams kind of at the bottom, that's really Seattle's already eliminated. Portland seems to be, because again, until we see another team do otherwise, that to me is the biggest challenge in the postseason, especially if Dallas is at home. I guess that's the thing too. Don't assume, right? What if what if disaster happens this weekend?
Look, that's true. They could slip. I was also going to say, the Galaxy could lose to Kenny Bundy's Houston Dynamo. Dynamo are finding a little bit.
And they probably will, because I'm not buying into the Galaxy as much as you are.
Well, I think they're good. I think with Puig and with Chicharito finding his form, they're undefeated in their last 3. They got smoked before that. But even then, I think they have 1 loss in the last 10 or something like that. To me, the Galaxy are the bookie team. To me, that's a scary, scary team, more than Portland. FC Dallas has had success against Portland this year, so I think
they have good players. I'd be scared of them. The rest of the team, yeah.
That's true. The defense is always a question mark for the Galaxy, seemingly no matter what happens. Doesn't seem to matter what year it is. It seems like the Galaxy defense is a question mark. Victor,
maybe Houston might beat the Galaxy, so then maybe, I don't know if that works out, they go up to Dallas and help you set
That's
up.
what I'm saying. That is a scenario that you could see happen. Houston could beat the Galaxy, so the Galaxy would stand 47. Nashville could jump with a victory against LAFC, and Portland has RSL, so Portland wins, and it's feasible that the Galaxy could be in Frisco. But lots of things that will happen. I'm sure you can follow Decision Day coverage. We'll be looking ahead to it on the Striker, and also covering it live, and also covering the aftermath next Monday when we do the show at 10 a.m. Chris Bills will be back. He was at the funeral of, I believe, a journalism mentor, so I'm sure he'd appreciate your condolences and messages on Twitter for someone I know he cared about a lot, and I think he did really proud. His stuff on Austin FC, despite the fact that he wasn't in the stadium, I really enjoyed reading from a fan perspective, just a neutral perspective. So make sure you check out his work.
I was a bit surprised. What was he writing a recap with the rosary in one hand and the laptop in the other? That was.
Hey man, we hustle. We hustle for our subscribers. We hustle for our subscribers. So again, condolences to Chris and to everyone who loved his journalism mentor, and there were a lot of people in the journalism community that were out there, for former professors, journalists, and all sorts of things. So again, I know Chris would appreciate hearing from the podcast family. I'd appreciate hearing from you, Victor, as to what the best thing you ate this week was.
I'm gonna shout out Los Charros over here on the east side of Houston. Anything you order from there, I think you'll be fine.
Good beans,
tacos, flautas, gorditas, whatever you want.
Charro beans? No charro. Okay. I was in Denver. I had a nice time. I had it's very rare in this business, and I've chosen it. I'm not upset. It's very rare to get like a Saturday night down where you're just kind of chilling out. So I was able to go to the Blake Street Tavern and watch like 8 college football games at once. Really good atmosphere. Got a new newsletter subscriber.
Oh.
I was sitting next to a Jamaican guy who was rooting for Georgia Bulldogs. But now he's also rooting for, well, he's already been rooting for the
Reggae Boys.
He's already been rooting for the Reggae Boys. Hopefully chat with their new coach coming on the newsletter, but that's a separate thing. And I also ate at Cherry Cricket, the Denver burger place. FC Dallas voice Mark Followell recommended that place to me in the past. I texted him saying, is this the right place? And he texted me back kind of very briefly. And then I realized he was in commercial break at a football game that he was calling. So thanks so much to Followell and all the local voices.
They give you a shout out on the broadcast.
I don't think they gave me a shout out. Hey, and John Reynolds eating a burger in Denver. Back to the game. Yeah. No, but I mean, I appreciate him taking the time to be like, yes, man, get a burger at this place. You know, you can never be too careful. Always got to make sure your rec is correct. Real quick, I'm still confused about the situation, but a lot of MLS local broadcast crews are kind of saying goodbye. We've got 3 great voices in English in Texas on the TV broadcast, other great voices in Spanish. The future seems a bit unclear. It would be an absolute shame if MLS doesn't find some way to allow teams to have these local voices, to have this local flavor continue, even with the Apple TV deal, which I think is a net positive for the league. Let's make sure we do right by these ladies and gentlemen who have served their local communities, who have served their teams. Hopefully teams find a role for them, or there's some sort of radio option, or they're involved in these national broadcasts on the Apple TV. I think it'd be an absolute shame if, you know, these people who work so hard to bring us the stories of the game, to bring us the fabric, the color, to do the work that they do. It'd be a real shame if they're not involved as the league kind of moves into this next chapter. Let's make sure that those voices don't get left behind, and not just because they give great burger recommendations, because they really do add to our enjoyment and understanding of the teams that we love.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll give a quick shout out here for those listening in Houston. I think there's a end of an era party or whatever we're calling this for Glenn and Eddie down at Cobos Q right by the stadium. So like you said, I think there's a lot of uncertainty until if broadcast teams are gonna continue for next season, whether that be in the radio deal or if the Apple TV deal is going to split people up. But certainly at least down here, I mean, they've been together for 11 years. Obviously Glenn's been doing it a little bit longer than that. Like you said, up in Dallas, Follow's been doing it. The Austin guys, it's kind of a shame they got 2 years in and now they're out. But
yeah. I mean, hopefully we can find good ways to keep those people in the game, because I think, like I said, it'd be a shame. Next week, decision day. Not that much in play for Texas teams, and we'll talk about all the ramifications right here on the podcast. Coverage on the Striker. Make sure you check out the site, subscribe, enjoy, and we'll talk to you guys next week on the Striker Texas MLS